late July in Uppsala, Sweden. Thunderstorms. This is the type of weather where you actually curl up with a good book in the sofa or couch with a cup of hot tea and maybe some good music. Let's see what we have in the collection. Something that will set the mood, so to speak. Yes, I think I got the perfect one. Just like film photography, there is something special about vinyl records. The kind of analog quality to it, the physical medium, and you know, just like analog photography, film photography, this is actually doing a comeback in popularity. So, yes. Okay, yes, T.B.Photo X1.5 TFX, and welcome back to another video. Well, I'm sitting here reading a bit in this book from one of my favorite photographers, Lennart Nilsson, who was actually a fairly good underwater photographer, or actually I would more accurately say liquid photographer, because this guy was not a scuba diver. He actually built his sets in aquariums in order to get these images. But yeah, anyway, even though it was a little bit semi-faked, I would say, he managed to take some really unsurpassed images in water, in liquid, of all types of sea creatures. And I think this was something he did before he did his famous A Child is Made series, or A Child is Born, like this. Let's see, octopus and lobster. Really good stuff. So if you have the chance, I would really recommend you take a look at this book, Life in the Oceans. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna do like so. This is bugging me a bit. There we go. Well, I still have it. It's all, well, it's still there. Well, everybody has to do a Bruce Willis sometime in their life, and yeah, that might be me in a couple of years' time, so meh. Anyway, when I started to do this this episode, well, rather, before I go any further, this is a little bit of an intro what this episode is going to be about. My newest underwater camera, named Kermit because SeaFrogs, seeing double, a little bit of before and after. Dude, have you seen my shaves? No, I don't cut the crabs, why do you ask? A crustacean that constantly swims in reverse. Testing the stream out of a JetStream. Lifeguard equipment 15 meters below the surface. And I'm still sitting in a chair. And we're back. Well, as stated, this was supposed to be an episode about, what should we say here, me changing the O-rings on my Nikonos 5 system, but I guess that will be a video for another time. Well, so what we're actually gonna do now is the backstory for this one. Well, one of the dive instructors from the local dive club, which is run by CMAS and SSDF, Svenska Sportdykarförbundet, Swedish Sport Recreational Divers Association or something like that, or union. Yeah, they were gonna do. He was gonna do a checkout dive on the lake Trollsjön in Tierp, but there had been a little bit of reports coming in that the sight in the lake was kind of bad. So he needed to do a checkout dive in order to check the visibility if it was viable enough to do the course. He put out the question and I answered that yes, I can be your dive buddy for this dive, and it actually made me able to kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, because my regulator, the Poseidon JetStream that I've talked about in numerous videos in the past, had just gotten back from service, and you're not supposed really to do a lot of diving with a regulator that hasn't been serviced in a while, or even after it's serviced you should really check it out thoroughly that it is working properly, because even though service technicians are really good at what they do most of the time, they're still only human, and it's a good practice to check it out thoroughly. So that was one thing, and also I thought that this is a golden opportunity for me to practice a little bit more of underwater photography. And I've done a video in the past about the CNC DX1G compact camera, link to those videos in the description and so on. But now I thought I would bring out the big guns, so to speak. So what did I bring to this, this impromptu dive? Well, the Sony A6000 in a SeaFrogs underwater camera housing. On the housing it says that this is supposed to be waterproof down to 60 meters. I'm a little bit skeptical about that, but as a beginner and someone who just wanted to get something to really start, and yeah, nothing bad about the DX1G, but this is a 24 and change megapixel camera, much newer, better in almost every aspect. It's an APS-C CMOS sensor, while the other one is the DX1G is a CCD sensor. But I'm using the same flash, a little bit of a bigger flash arm on it. And on the top here, on the accessory shoe, I have the Campark action camera. So I can actually film the entire dive continuously while taking images with the main camera. As we start our descent from the surface, the visibility is terrible. This milky green soup, we need to stay about 40 centimeters between each other without losing sight of each other. This is completely... Is this even viable as a dive? I don't feel disoriented, but there is a real sense of... I can't even describe it. You have to see it for yourself, this limited visibility dive experience, and it's not bottom sediment either, as you will see in a few minutes, but this is a real different type of feeling to dive and need to stay this close. It's like being in a blizzard. But luckily for us, there is a lot of safety lines and, guidelines along the bottom of this lake, since it's such a prolific place for scuba divers, both when it comes to recreational and schools that train to certify their students. But it's a really different experience. But what do you know, after a couple of meters down, I think it was about 6 meters, the visibility actually starts to improve. Well, it's not the crystal clear water of a pool or anything, but well, this is really much better than what we had at the surface, so every little improvement is a good improvement. As we swim along, suddenly something black darts across the bottom right in front of us. What can that be? Well, it's a crayfish. These guys really know how to fin backwards. Well, you eagle-eye viewers out there might have seen that a flash went out there on the crayfish, but unfortunately I did a noob mistake. I was watching through the action camera on top of the A6000, which meant I had the lens cap on. But I think that I will compensate with some just screenshots then, to just give a little bit more detailed look at the crawfish. And since it was my first dive since the service of my Poseidon JetStream regulator system, my dive buddy and former instructor decided to have a go at the octopus to see if the service had been done to satisfactory standards. But he had one of these regulators before himself, so he knew what to expect from a properly functioning Poseidon JetStream. Well, I would say that these are probably the Volvo 740 of the regulator world. They just simply work. Whichever way you look, you see presence of humans, but some of them is just to make the dive site more interesting. But here's a little bit of a specialty thing. I have tried to color correct the video, so here we're gonna do a side-by-side comparison. So, the big question is, which one do you prefer? Well, put it in the comment section below and let me know if it's the left one, where it is color corrected in Lightroom 6, or the right one, which is straight out of camera. Many people might associate scuba diving with adrenalin junkies and all types of action-adventure sports, but for me it's actually quite the opposite. This is one of the best forms of meditations in the world, in my opinion. It is complete tranquility, and it's probably the closest thing us mere mortals may come to becoming an astronaut, if not for Sir Richard Branson, if he has his way. After a few more minutes following the guideline, another crawfish swims right across our path, and I tried desperately to try to follow it to get a good picture, but alas, it was too quick for me this time. Well, we continued following the guideline on the bottom, and as you can probably tell now, we have actually gotten pretty decent visibility, at least a lot better from what we had when we started. So we're following now, we've gone down to basically the bottom of this first plateau of the old quarry that we're diving in. That is now a lake, Trollsjön I Tierp, Trollsjön in Tierp. And yeah, it is a really good, easy dive site with usually clear water. Suddenly the hill to our left starts to block out the sun for a bit, and at the same time something starts to emerge right in front of us where two guidelines actually meet underwater. What is it? Well, usually when you see one of these at these depths, something has gone very wrong indeed. Well, it is a life buoy that has been tied off to an old park garbage can, but no worries, this is actually a marker at the bottom. It's one of the parts that will make it so that you can orientate yourself where you are on the bottom of this quarry. Well, this was also where the visibility took a turn for the worst, but only on camera. I have no idea really why, but in reality we could actually see each other quite well. So I think it is a little bit of a drop off in light enough for the camera to do its job. Even though the video depicts this as pitch black almost, we could actually see fairly decently, just the limitations of cameras I suppose. But the modeling light on the YS110 flash actually illuminated a little bit at least for the camera, so it was actually quite... Oh, whoa, what is that? What? Psych, just a sand-filled glow. Yes, even though there is a lot of things in this lake, in order to make it a little bit more interesting to dive in, unfortunately that is also filled with trash. Well, it was around this time that I noticed that I had about 150 bars left in my 300 bar scuba tank, which means that it was time to turn the dive. So we started to make our way back to our entry point, which was to go to the slope and go up to the road, which is about 5 meters underwater, so a perfect place to do a safety stop for 3 minutes at. So yeah. Well, here comes another installment of modern art underwater in this quarry, and I thought that this sign actually had some white in it, so yeah, I took an image of it and I thought that I can use the white on this banner as a part of, you know, to do some white balancing or color correction in Lightroom. And just beside it, lying amongst the boulders, another trash can and its stand right beside it at the bottom of the lake. On a rock on our way back we found a pair of sunglasses, but right beside it, oh yes, perfect position, just try to get some good shots of this crayfish right on the rock. It was at this point I encountered one of the biggest challenges for a beginning or budding underwater photographer, and that is photo buoyancy control. Well, since this is a rock with a little bit of growth on it, if I put my hand or anything on it, I will whirl up some sediment and destroy all the visibility of this crawfish. So, what does one to do? Well, buoyancy, 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 as Jonathan Bird put it. Well, that's all the name of the game for good underwater photography when it comes to buoyancy control, in order to be able to get this subject in a good position and get a good image in the end. So yeah, two things that I would say that I would like to work on when it comes to my underwater photography. It is finning backwards and buoyancy maximization. Well, that's at least my to-do list to work on. Yes, as you can see, we're now making our way up the slope to our safety stop at 5 meters depth, and I decided to stow the camera because after a willing subject as that last crayfish on that boulder, I thought that I think my luck's run out for willing subjects on this dive trip, so I decided to just hang out and do the safety stop, and that would be it. But you know, things happen when you least expect it, and of course they also happen when you have put all your equipment away, turned off everything is, you know, turned off and so on. You know, the classic scenario. We'll see. Well, wouldn't you know, right in the middle of the safety stop there is a crayfish right in front of me on the slope. So it was nothing else to do than just scramble to get all the camera gear out again. Let's take a look at pre and post edit here as well. Yeah, as you can see, but it was really to have such bloody luck to be able to have one crawfish that is also willing to sit and model for me right in dead set in front of me. So that was just really, really lucky. And yeah, I might not be the best underwater photography, and I've never claimed to be anything of the sort. I'm just a happy amateur, and this made me very happy indeed to have such a willing subject right in front of me. can there be a more perfect ending to a dive in a artificial lake in the middle of Uppland, Sweden at the end of July? Well, I'm hard pressed to find anything different than such. But yeah, we started out this dive with almost zero visibility, about 40 centimeters. Yes, ironically we ended the dive with the same kind of poor visibility at a bit depth, about from the surface down to, yeah, I would say 5 or 6 meters. But below that, 5 and below on some areas, it was really actually fairly decent actually compared to what it was in the more shallow parts of the lake. But all in all, that said, yeah, as for my dive buddy and for my instructor, he said basically that it's an anomaly that this lake has such poor visibility. That's basically why it is so frequently used as a training ground for new divers. Which basically is a bit, well, why is it this? One thing I noticed was that in the shallow parts of this lake, it was extremely warm in the water. It was about 22 degrees Celsius, but when we were at our deepest, at about 15 meters, it was almost 3 degrees Celsius, so quite the temperature drop. And what I also noticed that was the bad visibility, as you can see here, the milky parts were where the water was the warmest. So yeah, maybe this is just me reading into it, but climate change. Anyhow, it is moments like these when the dreamer in me comes out to play, and yeah, it would be remarkable if I was able to work with this, doing underwater documentaries, you know, filmmaking and photography as a full-time profession underwater or on land and nature. So yeah, I'm not having any illusions of doing it full time. I have a good job and so on, but it is moments like these that really puts a golden edge on the, you know, everyday. Well, the English version would be silver lining, well, the Swedish version is golden edge on life. Well, what we also had a little bit when we did this dive was that we saw a little bit of wildlife. This lake, Trollsjön, is not really known for having any significant amount of fish in it, but what it do have is crayfish or crawfish, depending on how you want to pronounce it. But this is just both good and bad. Well, how can it be both good and bad? Well, it is good in the way that there is some kind of wildlife that is available to see in this lake. It is bad in what type of wildlife it is. Well, crayfish, it's delicious. I like to eat it myself. I think it's fantastic. But there's 2 species that live now in Sweden, and one of them is the native flodkräfta or river crawfish. And the second one is the North American signal crayfish or crawfish, and that's not good. Well, it was basically in the 60s, 70s, somewhere along there I believe, where they wanted to up the population of crayfish in Sweden, crawfish, and what they did then was that they imported North American signal crayfish. And what happened was that turned out to be a very much invasive species in a way, because the North American signal crayfish carries the crayfish plague. The thing is then that the signal crayfish is immune to the crayfish plague, which is not the case, unfortunately, with the river crawfish. The river crawfish will actually get the crawfish plague and die. So we were almost on the verge of making the native river crayfish go completely extinct. So that's a little bit when you try to meddle with nature and for economic gains, which was the case in this point. So yeah, that's a little bit of a side note with this, but all in all it was actually interesting to get some images of it, and you will see those in the video here shortly. Okay, so anyway, I thought that yes, I brought the Sony a6000 on this little excursion, but I thought I was planning to use that in an upcoming little adventure, but that's for a next video. All in all, now I actually got to check it out in a real life setting, not just checking the housing in a bucket to see that it's watertight, but actually using it during a dive. And when it comes to diving and underwater photography, I have actually done a little bit of a list to check myself. What do I need to work on when it comes to underwater photography to become a little bit more proficient at it? Well, photo buoyancy control, something that Jonathan Bird actually talks about when he's on a vacation with his family, and it is:
we review the marine park rules, the most important of which is to not touch anything or break any coral.
Buoyancy, buoyancy, buoyancy.
That reminds me of something. What can that be? Oh yes, SNL.
Come on, don't give me that. Come on, let's go. We're gonna have turnover. We want a cheeseburger? Come on, everybody got a cheeseburger. Want a cheeseburger? Come on, cheeseburger. I don't want a cheeseburger. It's too early for a cheeseburger. Too early for a cheeseburger? Look! Cheeseburger, 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 cheeseburger.
Anyway, yeah, that's a classic. But yeah, well, you guys, I think that will be all for me for now. Hope you enjoy this video, this little mini documentary or whatever you want to call it, about a dive trip to a lake, an artificial lake at that. But I think that this is a little bit interesting at least, and hope you enjoy, and as always, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And as always, take care from now on. Bye.